Well, welcome everyone to our International Women's Day Alumni panel in partnership with Sheridan Student Union and Sheridan Alumni. My name is Alicia Siegler and I'm the Alumni Coordinator Special Projects here at Sheridan.
And good afternoon. My name is Gabby Moore Youssef. I am the Sheridan Student Union's Vice President of College and Staff Engagements. Thank you for joining us. As we gather virtually today, we would like to acknowledge that all of Sheridan's campuses reside on land that has been and still is the traditional territory of several Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Since time immemorial, numerous Indigenous nations and Indigenous people have lived and passed through this territory. We recognize that this territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty and the Two-Row Wampum Treaty, which emphasize the importance of joint stewardship, respectful relationships, and peace. As you may be joining us from different territories, we acknowledge the many diverse nations and territories you may be joining us from. Sheridan affirms that it is our collective responsibility to honor and respect those who have gone before us, those who are here, and those who have yet to come. We are grateful for the opportunity to be learning, working, living, and thriving on this land.
Today, in celebration of International Women's Day, we will have a candid discussion with women who are leaders in male-dominated industries. These successful Sheridan alumni will share the stories of how they use their voices to initiate change and break the bias. Throughout the discussion, we would love to hear your comments and questions. Please put them in the chat located at the bottom of the screen, and we'll be sure to ask the panelists for you.
Since we only have an hour and we have a lot to talk about, we should get started. So please join me in welcoming our panelists. So our first question for today is for each of you to take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself and why do you think it's important to celebrate or acknowledge International Women's Day? Selena, we'll start off with you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. It's always exciting to be on a Sheridan alumni panel, so thank you. My name is Selena Jasmine Singh. I work as an in-arena host, a podcast host, a digital and freelance live event host, as well as a content creator. I do work heavily in sports and entertainment, so definitely at least once upon a time a very male dominant industry, and still is to some extent as well. I'm really grateful and lucky to work with so many amazing women, and I think the biggest thing for me is just always voicing what is true to myself and like staying true to my values. And even when it feels scary, just knowing that like I do have internal power to speak up on things that are important to me. And it's a lot easier said than done, but I know that I feel my best when I'm like in my power and in my truth, even if it's something that kind of goes against the grain of what we've once known, especially in an industry that feels more male dominant. And I also want to shout out some of the really incredible men that are also really great advocates for women in the workplace, especially in male dominant workplaces. So that's what I would say.
Amazing. Let me pass it on to Charuvi.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me over. Very quickly, Charuvi Agrawal, animation film director, producer, immersive artist. Also founder of Charuvi Design Labs, a boutique animation studio that makes 3D films for TV, OTT platforms, museums, video games. I did my fine arts undergraduate degree from College of Arts in Delhi, which is based out of India, and then a post-graduation from Sheridan in animation. I'm 38, married, and a mom to a 6-year-old boy. International Women's Day to me is a day where I get to learn about the achievements and struggles of women all over the world. It gives me that extra bit of confidence, pride, that women have indeed come a long way, and it isn't very far that equality shall be achieved. Well, thank you.
Beautifully said. Next up, I'll hand it over to Jennifer.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. I'm Jennifer Benedict, and I'm alumni from Architectural Technology Co-op in 2008. After I graduated from Sheridan, I went on to finish a bachelor's degree in environmental studies and onto a master's in civil engineering from the University of Toronto. So I'm a professional engineer now. I work for CP Rail as an assistant director in public works crossing compliance, so in their engineering department. And I'm responsible for regulatory compliance of railway crossings right across Canada, as well as government projects for bridges and roads for most of Canada. And International Women's Day is really important to me because as a mom of a young daughter, I want to make sure that we take this time to celebrate, reflect, and learn. I want to make sure that we're making changes and doing things that will open doors for her and make sure that she doesn't have to struggle the way some of us have had to struggle in our careers in non-conventional women's roles.
Beautifully said. And last but not least, Erin, would you like to take it away?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here. My name's Erin Stevenson. I'm the co-founder of Dozer. We are a construction tech software company that is bringing e-commerce to the $60 billion construction equipment rental industry. So International Women's Day, I think, is important to me so that we are celebrating and showcasing the successes that women have had, particularly women in leadership roles or unconventional leadership roles in many cases, both to provide, a sense of just realness and achievability for, the younger generation of women, giving them some role models that they can, look up to, but also just to keep the conversation going. We've obviously made a lot of progress, but there's still a ways to go. And by keeping the conversation going and keeping it top of mind, I think it allows us to continue to make progress.
Great, thank you guys so much. So the next question is, 73% of women experience bias at work, yet less than a third of employees are able to recognize bias when they see it. Whether deliberate or unconscious, bias makes it harder for women to get hired and promoted and negatively impacts our day-to-day work experience. All of you are leaders within a traditionally male-dominated industry. Can you tell us about a time that you have experienced bias and how you overcame it and or challenged it? Jennifer, would you like to start first?
Sure. I've definitely had experiences where I've felt that I've been discriminated against, whether it's gender or age. And like most women, it's not something that I addressed at the time. But as I've matured and grown in my profession and become more comfortable with being a woman in a male-dominated industry, I've become more comfortable speaking up when something doesn't feel right. So without going into specifics of I don't want to talk about, specific situations, but what I've learned most is that we should never assume that we're being discriminated against. Making those assumptions could hurt our professional careers and affect our credibility. So instead, we need to ask probing questions. And to do that, we have to make people feel a little bit uncomfortable. So if something isn't sitting right with us, we have to, be comfortable to say, this appears to be gender discrimination. Do you see how this could appear to be gender discrimination? And then start a conversation about it. And for me, that's been the most successful way in bringing attention and awareness to situations that I feel I'm being discriminated against.
Thank you. Erin, would you like to join in?
Sure. I've certainly experienced my share of bias, whether that be in the construction industry or in the tech industry in the past. But, most of the time, and it's been a while since I've experienced anything really, really overt, to be honest. Most of the time, it's that sort of systemic bias that creeps in without, people being aware, without even myself sometimes being aware until later when I go back and reflect on that situation and say, oh, that doesn't sit right with me and what might be driving that. And so that's really challenging to address that systemic bias, whether that be in the moment or later on. I think most people are coming with good intentions and they just don't realize, they don't recognize that bias in themselves. So the way that I've addressed that typically is in my own company, because I'm in a leadership role. I have a position of power and a voice. to be able to make change in my own company, and then to be able to showcase those changes out to the rest of the industry, so I can make sure that we're making the right decisions at Dozer. We're supporting women, we're supporting minorities, whatever that may be. And then I can show other companies that are in similar spaces, whether that's tech or construction, how they can still grow, they can still be successful, they can still do all the things that they all the achievements they want to have, but make decisions in a bit of a different way that reduces the amount of biases there.
Thank you. Selena?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with both what Jennifer and Aaron said. And Jennifer specifically, I resonate with the idea and concept around getting curious, because much like what Aaron said, like I haven't experienced anything extreme recently. And from what I can remember, I'm very grateful to have stepped into my industry when I did, because I think we were already moving in more of a progressive way versus maybe perhaps if I had jumped into this industry when my mom was my age or my grandma was my age, I think it would have been very different. So I'm very grateful in that sense, but I think getting curious is a really, really big, important thing to just remember, and just know that instead of like accusing or coming from that lens, it's good to ask questions and kind of see where people are at. And I do know too that I find just being able to like deal with my own ego around certain things helps me better respond in a way that I'm more confident and proud of. So for example, like working in sports, I actually grew up playing a ton of sports. Like I won my athlete of the year in elementary school. I'm very proud of that to this day. So when people are like, you don't look like you played sports, like you don't know what you're talking about, instead of me reacting and getting defensive, like I definitely once did, now I find better ways of just understanding that everyone comes from a different lens and a different life experience, where maybe they've never seen girls or people that identify as women look like me playing sports or knowing anything about sports. So I think it's a lot of like internal work as well, and just also leaning on people you feel comfortable with. So if I felt uncomfortable about a situation, just reaching out to someone that I feel really supported by and being like, hey, you know what, I experienced this the other day and I don't know how to handle it, or I don't really know where they're coming from. Can we address it? Or can you help support me in this? I think that's been really helpful, is like asking for help as well.
And sometimes it's just about educating somebody because they don't understand like what they said or they're doing is wrong. So it's just telling them like, well, maybe you should try this next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Charuvi?
So I have faced biases as an employee, as an employer, as a service provider, as a customer, a student, and much more if I start looking back. But however, you need to face these head on, be persistent and be focused on the goal. In time, it just becomes more about you than your gender, and the biases start receding. One just needs to be persistent and patient. For example, I'll share an example. When I started my studio, which was back in 2009, I was the only female-run animation studio, which was unheard of in India. So both as an employer and a service provider, finding work in the industry and sustaining a male-dominated talent was quite a challenge. And it took me years to overcome these roadblocks. Thankfully, things have changed far more now, looking back. But yeah, it's still progressing though.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Jennifer, I wanted to ask you specifically, how do you feel the industry can improve on its attitude towards gender discrimination?
I think we have a long way to go. The first step, I think, in Canada, we're doing a good job. We just implemented the Pay Equity Act, and having more transparency in the gender pay gap is really important. So I'm proud of what the country's doing, but we're not quite there yet. As I said before, we need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and having those uncomfortable conversations. So if you see something that doesn't seem right, say something. And that's the only way that we're going to bring awareness and attention. If you're in a meeting and somebody says to the woman next to you, hey, why aren't you smiling today? Maybe say something that women don't need to be smiling all the time. Why does she need to be smiling? So make people feel a little bit uncomfortable so that we can raise awareness around things that are not appropriate in the workplace. The other thing that I think is important is representation at all levels, but not necessarily equal representation if it's not the right person. So I don't believe in promoting because somebody is a female, but if you have a good table of people that are well represented, you don't need another female VP at the table. Maybe the executive assistant has a strong voice and she should be attending some of the meetings so that she can speak up and comment on some things, especially around the HR issues and women in the workplace. The other thing that I think is critical is sponsorship. So we always talk about mentorship. Mentorship is great. It's a great way to coach women and to help develop them and lead them. But sponsorship is when you take somebody by the hand and you introduce them to people and you advocate for them for jobs and you help them get to the next level. And that I think is missing in our, especially in my industry. We don't have a lot of women where, you're being taken by the hand and introduced to somebody. And that doesn't have to be from another woman. It could be men doing the same thing, but traditionally men do this on a regular basis anyways. They go and play golf together and they're introducing each other to people. So there's more networking, I think, for males in my industry.
That's amazing advice. I love that. Like sponsorship. We need to do way more of that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about imposter syndrome. So for those who may not know what imposter syndrome is, some people call it the impossibility syndrome. It's how we are self-sabotaging us. We feel like a fraud in our careers, afraid to speak up and be seen. And we just undervalue our skills, experiences, and our accomplishments. Then at the end of the day, we sit down and judge ourselves and not being more successful, creative, or further ahead. So this is open to any of the panelists. Please just jump on in. What is your advice on overcoming imposter syndrome? Would anybody like to start?
Sure, I can jump in on.
Oh, sure. Please go ahead, Erin.
Sorry, Charuvi. I think one thing that working in tech has done for me is it's been a really humbling experience because things move so fast and they change so quickly that, I came to the realization, many years ago that nobody knows everything and nobody has all of the answers, and everybody has imposter syndrome to one degree or another. And so my approach has been a little bit unconventional, where I kind of embrace it. I embrace the fact that I don't know everything, that I have a lot to learn from those around me, and being vulnerable about it, especially as a leader. Being able to be vulnerable, I think, can help your team to feel that they can be vulnerable as well. So, I will actually openly admit to my team when I don't know something or I'm not an expert in a particular area, and ask for help and say, I'm looking to learn more about this subject. Do any of you have expertise that you can help me learn more? Or I'm research. I probably every week go to my team and say, I'm researching this new thing. I don't know anything about it, but I'm really curious and I'm really excited to dive in and learn more. And so just actually taking that imposter syndrome and diving right headfirst into it, I think it just breaks that down. There's no room for it anymore when you're vulnerable and you embrace that. There's no room for somebody to question what you know and what you don't know when you're open about what you know and what you don't know. I think probably you need to be in a position where you feel safe doing that, but you can start with people that you respect and that you trust and that you feel, have your back, and encourage that learning mentality, and, try it out and then see if you can gain some traction and help that feeling spread.
Thank you. Would anybody like to add on to anything?
Sure, Alicia. I completely echo with Erin's thoughts over here. I feel one needs to make a massive effort to stay away from negative people and have a support group around you. Human beings are social creatures, and we need emotional and psychological support, which obviously boosts our confidence levels, gives us a sense of security and purpose. The rest falls on hard work, having clarity about goals, and then learning to chill. For example, I do yoga with my 6-year-old, and it's a massive de-stressor for me. So that really helps.
Great, thank you. Yeah, please go ahead, Jen.
I think one of the other things is building on your emotional intelligence and recognizing what is a fact and what is a feeling or a limiting belief. So when you're feeling like you're a fraud, you have to think about what the facts are. You're well educated, you have great experience and all the good things that you've done. Whereas when you're saying, oh, I don't think I can do this, nobody likes me, those are really limiting beliefs. And when those come in, we have to catch them and say, nope, that's something that's preventing me from getting to where I want to be, and let it go. And part of that is also not worrying so much about what other people think, because what people think of you is a reflection of themselves. So worrying so much about other people liking you isn't as important as having people respect you. And if you can build that respect through credibility, accountability, and following through on your actions, I think having respect from others is far more important than being liked.
Wow. that was great, Jen. Thank you so much.
This is all so good. And I'm just on the other end here and I'm like, I know we're on a panel, but I'm like, yes, like, I love that. I just like want to type in the chat. I really, really love what Erin was talking about in terms of staying open and vulnerable. I think that's a massive superpower that I often forget. And it's so true. Like when you're open and vulnerable to things you don't know, or just being so honest, like, hey, you know what? I actually don't know this. I need to learn this and I'm open to learning. I think that's really powerful. I also really love what Jennifer said about emotional intelligence. And I find that that's what helps me with imposter syndrome is really diving into like my own mental health as well, and like my emotional health, and using resources. So speaking of emotional intelligence, there is a book that I use as well as leaning into my strengths. It's called Strengths Finder. And not that you need like a quiz or anything to tell you what your strengths are, but this really helped me put it into words and kind of articulate what 5 top strengths that, I carry as a person based off of the way that I took this quiz. And it allowed me to kind of dive into them and how I work with those strengths, what people kind of complement those strengths and how to use them, where I have opportunities. And anytime I'm feeling like I have imposter syndrome, it's like really diving into my mental health, leaning into my strengths, taking inventory of my emotional intelligence and my emotional health, and just putting in like my focus hat on and having like a tiny bit of tunnel vision when it comes to blocking out comparison. So just being like putting my head down and being like, okay, Selena, let's focus on my path and what I have to offer and what I have to learn and where I can go from here, versus getting distracted by all the other things going on around me. So that's what helps me with imposter syndrome.
Great. And that was find your strengths.
So
Strengths
Finder. Yeah. So there's also an emotional intelligence. I believe it's emotional intelligence 2.0, and both books, they give you like a quiz code that you can go online and like take the quiz. And it's just really helpful. Like I said, you don't need a quiz to tell you any of these things, but it is really helpful if you don't have those tools yet. And I didn't have those tools yet. So it was really helpful for me. And I look back on them all the time just to be like, okay, I'm feeling, a certain way about something and I need a refresher. I need to, lean back into these things because I'm having a hard time. So you can find them at like Indigo chapters. And yeah, they're really helpful.
Yeah. Honestly, it's really ironic. For one of my courses in the Bachelor's of Business Administration program, we actually have to use that book in order to understand what makes us all so unique and how we can complement each other. So I'm glad that you were able to recommend that, but also everyone's advice right there. Can you all collaborate, please, and make that into a book? I think everybody would eat up all of that advice. It was incredible. But for now, Selena, I'm gonna come to you with a question. What is your advice on encouraging female voices to speak up on matters that impact them dearly? Are there any personal stories that helped uplift you in raising your voice on any subject?
That's a really good question, and it's a difficult one to answer. I think it really just has to do with, for me at least, it's always had to do with connecting to my core values as a human being and staying true to myself as much as I can. And just knowing too, like in the past 2 years, I'm sure for a lot of us on here, like it's been really difficult. There's been a lot of hardship and a lot of loss. And for me, it was a lot of grief. And so experiencing a lot of grief also allowed me to know that like, you have this one shot, you have this one life. And if you have something to say, if you have something that's really important to you, it's something that, you know, it's like, why not speak up on it? Why not see if you can make a change with that thing that you're passionate about? Because when are you ever going to get the chance to do it? And you don't really know how much time you have left here. So if you can make impact for yourself or make impact for other people around you, it's, to me, it's just like a why not situation. And again, just going back to my own core values. And if you have core values of yourselves, just connecting with that and seeing what resonates in your heart and in your soul. But I would just say like life experience has really, really allowed me to like push forward and just be confident in what I'm passionate about and maybe fighting for or wanting to speak up on. For example, I started a page called What About Brown before the pandemic, and it had to do with just spotlighting people that identify as brown and their professions, their accomplishments, achievements, their struggles. And that really stemmed from my grandparents and just really respecting and wanting to learn more about the things that they went through after that, you know, they've passed away and they've transcended. But it's been a really cool opportunity for me to like learn about my other community and the things that people go through. And that's something I was really nervous and scared to speak up about, because growing up as like a South Asian woman, I dealt with a lot of hardship as a kid, and it was really scary to like jump into that and speak up on it. But I'm glad I did. And I feel like I really honored my grandparents and some of the community around me and my parents and my family. So that's just one example, but these are all the things that have really contributed to me wanting to speak up about specific things I'm passionate about.
Thank you so much. So again, this is open to all the panelists. Leaders often credit mentors and allies with helping them get where they are. What role has mentorship or allyship played in your own career journey? Charuvi, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure, Alicia. I have been very fortunate to have many allies throughout my entire life. My parents were always supportive of my love for arts. So was my extended family. My teachers in art college were generally very helpful. Later on, of course, Sheridan Institute was tremendously helpful. And then I got lucky with my husband and the family, of course, my joint family. And they have been very supportive of my career journey. So yeah, I've been very, in terms of my allies, I have been very grateful to my family and my friends across.
That's awesome. Erin, what about you?
Yeah, I think mentorship and allyship have played a really big role in my journey at Dozer and my success here. We've been fortunate to be a participant in a number of programs specifically for tech companies, you know, whether that's an accelerator program or otherwise, that we've gotten access to some really, really fantastic mentors through those programs who have really helped us to, you know, look at our business from a different point of view, or look at our leadership from a different point of view, and learn and grow from those experiences. But allyship, I think, is something that is undervalued. And that's probably where I've seen the most significant gains. You know, there's, you know, different communities that I try and get involved with. There's a community of tech founders that are people that are going through similar experiences to me, trying to grow and scale their companies, facing similar challenges. I have networks of women leaders that, you know, are business owners that I can call on that are also facing a different set of challenges that are similar to my own. And, you know, then there's allies of just different people that, you know, are invested in the success of my success or the success of my company. And those are the people that I find really open the doors. They're the ones that are making the introductions. They're giving the advice. They're, you know, showing me the way. You know, if you can find somebody who is in their career, but they're maybe just a few steps ahead of you, a few years ahead of you in their journey, there's so much you can learn from them, because their experience is really, really relevant. The things that they have just gone through or the things that you're about to hit, the roadblocks that you're about to encounter. And so building that network, building an allyship with them, you can really unlock all sorts of great insights that you can learn from and hopefully help you get past some of those roadblocks a little bit faster, a little bit easier.
Great, thank you. What about you, Jennifer?
So I've been really fortunate to have great mentors. Probably in the last 8 years since I've been with CP Rail, it's been the height of my career in terms of mentorship, where a lot of men who have been in the railway industry for years have just taken me under their wing and taken me on as one of their own, which has been very, very nice. My boss as well has been very supportive and is a mentor to me. And whenever I need coaching or mentorship, he's there. But when we talk about allies, there aren't that many women in the railway industry and railway engineering. So the few that are there have become, very close allies and very close friends, because we don't have that many other people to rely on. So we make sure to support each other no matter what. And it's really nice to have that sense of community with other women in the same industry, because in my previous roles in previous companies, we didn't have that. So where I am now, I feel like there's a good tight group of people that I can rely on. And I hope that, any women in a male-dominated industry have that.
Thank you. And Selena?
Yeah, I think it's really beautiful and so impactful to have mentorship and allyship. And something that I've grown to be really thankful for is actually like my community of mentors and allies, just they're in their respective fields, because we all kind of relate back to similar things. But for example, like I have friends in more like the wellness space, or more like the self-help and development, or specific like business avenues and like entrepreneurship. And it's really cool to be able to connect with them one-on-one and pick their brains on certain things. And it's cool that we can all help each other in different ways. Like we might not all work in the exact same industry, but I often am trying to connect people to other people, because I'm like, oh, this person would be so great for this, or, oh, I know the perfect, person that could help you with this thing. So I really think it's such a special thing to just meet people and connect with them and see what their specialties are and what they have to offer. Because you never know who you could connect with, and you never know who you could connect other people to, and it's just like a bit of like a connecting web for me. And I think the more I've seen it in that perspective, the more eager I am to continue connecting with people on a very genuine level. Because I think when I was in like Sheridan broadcast journalism, we had like networking events and stuff, they were incredible. And I think just at this point in the industry, things weren't as evolved as they are now. So networking felt a little different than it does now. And I'm just really happy that we've come to a place that feels like more genuine. And it just, you don't have to be forced to just go to this event and shake hands with everybody and try to get on their good side and slip them your business card. It's like, okay, there are other ways to network too. So I'm really thankful for some incredible women specifically that have created really awesome like networking, but more like connection-based platforms for people to meet.
Great. I see we have a question in the chat. Gabby, did you want to read that out before you go to the next question? Just to follow up about this question.
I do not see this one.
Oh, okay, here. So they say, thank you for sharing your stories. For those interested in mentoring young female identified individuals emerging in male-dominated industries. Oh, sorry. She says, please contact me. So if any of you are interested in mentoring, we do have a student here who would love to connect with you.
Sheridan used to do a speed dating mentorship. I don't know if you were around, Alicia, when they were doing that, but it was a great way to connect the students with people in the industry. And then if you find somebody that you really connect with, you can carry on that relationship after the session. So it might be something that you can consider for the future.
Yeah, and we still do something similar to that. And we also have Sheridan Connect, which is our online mentoring platform. So Carolina, it's a great way to connect with everyone, and then you can also find a mentor that way. But I will definitely share your contact with all of these lovely ladies today.
Erin, I am now going to put you in the hot seat. So as the Chief Operating Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, and the co-founder of Dozer, Can you tell us a little more about your experience leading your team? Do you feel that you have to do things differently because you're a woman in leadership? What kind of advice could you give to those who are also in a leadership position in a male-dominated industry? That's a lot there, I know.
That's a big question. Lots to unpack there for sure. I think, certainly I felt pressure at times to do things differently as a female leader. Usually that stems from that sort of that systemic bias there of like a woman should lead in a certain way. And I think, we've all experienced these types of biases in the past where, if you're too, aggressive, you're considered a certain way, or if you're too passive, you're considered a certain way, and you're just constantly being judged for not necessarily your outcomes, but that the behaviors and how you actually approach your leadership style. I've kind of thrown that to the wind, so to speak. So, for me, I've decided that it's really important for me to be my authentic self. And authenticity is something, that is a core value at our company as well. It's something that we really believe is important. And it's a critical factor to our success. So I need to make sure that I'm embodying that value. And so that means that, I'm going to lead in a way that's true and authentic to me. I have to stay true to that course. And, it takes a little bit of building up your own confidence to be able to say, this leadership style is the most effective and it's the most authentic to me, and to not sort of try and change who you are or how you do things based on somebody else's perception of what you should be doing. It's definitely a layer of complexity added to that when you start getting feedback about your leadership style to say, okay, you have to parse that apart and say, what part of this feedback is actually real, something I need to work on, something that I should improve on, and what part of this is just based on bias or based on opinion and not, actually going to change my effectiveness as a leader. And so it takes a little bit of self-reflection to try and tease that apart and understand where you can improve, and not just write it off as being biased, but also not just immediately accepting it as true. So it takes a little bit more work, to evolve and to grow as a leader in that way. But it's worth it. I think being authentic, if you're not authentic, your team can see through it right away. And it's going to be much more difficult for them to buy into your vision, for them to buy into your mission, for them to buy into you as their leader. It's going to be more difficult to gain that trust with them. So I think that authenticity is really important. So be confident, stay the course, and be the best leader that you can be.
100%. I think one of the best things I've ever heard in correlation to what you just said is be you, because everyone else is taken. Now, everyone's seen Elon Musk. Everyone's seen Rihanna. Be you, and everyone will love you for you. You are put in this position because you're you. You don't need to fake it.
Awesome advice there, Gabby. That was great. Again, another question for the entire panelists. What progress have you seen on gender equality in your life and in work? Selena, would you like to start this one off?
I think we've come a long way, and I think we still have a ways to go. But from what I've seen, it looks like there are more opportunities that seem more equitable, especially knowing where, some women have come from in the industries that I've worked in. So I think opportunities and providing people opportunities, like if you're in a place of leadership, or if you're in a position of power or leadership in your organization, if you have the power to develop or take someone under your wing and create opportunities for them based on their skill and their ability, of course, because I think that was mentioned earlier, like don't just promote someone because they're a woman, but if you're actively looking to create more equitable experiences and looking to actually build these people up, then I think you are doing a really great job of creating like a better future for us all. So that's what I would say. I think that's how I've gotten into a lot of places that I've gotten to, either by having really great leadership, or having people above me or around me that are open to change and open to, you know, just like having a woman in a position that you might not see them in. So opportunity, I think, is the biggest one, whether you're creating opportunity or if you're providing opportunity.
Jennifer, what do you think?
Definitely seen a lot in my life, a lot of change. When you look at maternity benefits, that's one of them, where, you know, the federal government has increased that for women in the last few years, and I was fortunate enough to benefit from those opportunities, but also just seeing more representation at different levels. For example, in the railway industry, there's a female CEO at CN Rail now. That's the first in 140 years of railway in Canada. So that's a pretty extraordinary thing for my industry. But definitely, you know, there's been a lot of change and more to come.
Erin?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of progress. Primarily, I think most people that I encounter now, they kind of recognize the bias that's there. They recognize maybe some of the issues that women face. And I've seen a lot of programming, like specifically targeted towards women leaders, you know, funding for women-led companies. There's a lot more of that coming out, and there's more and more every year, and the budgets and the financing for those programs are growing from year to year. So that's a really, really positive sign. I think people are putting their money where their mouth is in that respect. I think where we still have some work to do is in creating those everyday opportunities. Like, I think a lot of these programs are looking for those big ticket wins of like, let's take this female-led company or this woman leader and like really accelerate her career, which is fantastic. And I don't want to diminish that at all. It's really, really important. But there's things that we need to do in the everyday moments of our working lives to help make a friendlier environment for women. One of the things that comes top of mind right away, was mentioned earlier. I think Jennifer, you mentioned like networking opportunities, right? Which we all know that a lot of business happens outside the boardroom, and these networking opportunities can be so important and so valuable in, getting business, also in building that network to get that allyship that can be so valuable. Yet most of the networking opportunities, in my experience, are happening after business hours, and many women are, the primary caregiver in their families. I'm a mother of 3 very young children, and it is difficult sometimes to be able to make it to these networking opportunities. And it's a constant trade-off of, okay, I think this opportunity is going to be really valuable, but I don't have childcare, or I need to get a babysitter, or whatever that looks like. And so it's a barrier immediately to just even accessing some of those opportunities, because, you have to rework sort of what's happening in your personal life to be able to make room and make space for those. And I think that's just something that people don't even think about most of the time. They think, well, let's put it outside of business hours so it's not disrupting their workday, but not necessarily considering what's happening on the other end of that event. So that's a really easy one. Like, why not have a lunchtime networking event or something where, it's a little bit easier for women to access and creates a more equitable environment for them. So I think looking for those little moments every day that we can make that just a friendlier, more approachable place for women would be kind of the next step in my mind.
Love that. I have nothing else to say. Love it. Would you like to say anything, Charuvi?
Yeah, sure, Alicia. So there has been a tremendous progress, I would say. 15 years ago, it was unheard of women to get into animation industry specifically. And today there are thousands. It is a credit to these women who have found their way and, found their way into the organizations, and for the organizations to evolve and accept the women and encourage them furthermore. In today's time, in fact, in India specifically, more and more families are supporting girl child to pursue creative careers in the industry. So I think things are drastically transforming, which is great.
Well, you know what? With our next question, I am going to give you the little bit of accolades just to show what you have been able to do in the animation industry, especially in India. You created a phenomenal animated series called The Legends of Hanuman.
Hanuman, that's correct.
There we go. Which was launched on Disney+Hotstar in January of 2021. The show attracted over 8.5 million viewers in its first 10 days, which is phenomenal, while creating a milestone for immersive and high-quality original animation content in India. How does it feel to know that you are changing the animation world and creating a pathway for other female animators?
Gabby, to be honest, I just feel I've barely scratched the surface. Typically, just one success story gives hope to millions. So it feels incredible when I am approached to mentor young female graduates, but I still have a really long way to go. I feel I've been very fortunate enough to follow my passions and get opportunities to do work that I enjoy. I feel that perhaps more women need to do the same, and we are definitely seeing that across the industry. So yeah, I mean, all encouragement to all female creators out there.
Amazing. We do have a question from the audience. So after 2 years of lockdowns, where we have heard that women were affected, where we have heard that women were affected more by moving to remote work, how would you encourage our new recent grads to get comfortable again speaking face-to-face in the workplace to positively affect their future careers? Would anybody like to answer that? It's a tricky one. I mean, I would say is even joining, again, Sheridan Connect or a mentoring platform and meeting one-on-one with some other alumni who can definitely help you. I mean, I think face-to-face, just being on a Zoom call is great.
I feel there are a lot of Zoom webinars and all of them which are happening in regards to industry. So whatever career path the student wants to pursue in regards to the graduate student who wants to pursue, they could start attending those webinars. And, in fact, there are open forums now, and you can just connect to the industry expert, talk to them, and kind of connect, because that's the best way to, I think now in social media and digital age, it's so much easier to connect to the, to experts, to mentors. They're far more approachable. I mean, considering we created a television show during the lockdown, it was so much easy. I mean, we were speaking to broadcasters across the globe, and it never felt that we were not physically there with them. And there were new connections happening on and on. So it was quite spontaneous. It's all about, going out of your comfort zone and reaching out, even though it's digitally reaching out. But I feel it's much more easier than physically traveling, meeting, seeking appointments. So I think digital era has changed everything. So I think one should just take the opportunity, send out an email, reach out on Instagram, on Twitter, whatever. You have various platforms.
And you can reach out to anybody in the world.
You can reach anybody in the world. Yeah, completely. I mean, I've been connecting with all sorts of Marvel writers right across. So.
Erin, Jennifer, sorry, I see you all are on mute now, so go ahead.
I think that, this isn't unique to just new graduates. This is something that all workplaces are facing with reintegration of employees back to the office. So if a student is looking to get more comfortable, they could be the initiators of some of these activities to help people get back into the workplace. Maybe they have to have some team lunches and different events in the workplace. So as a new grad or a younger person in the office, take the initiative to plan something. And that will help them get a little bit more comfortable, but also create a bit more connection between everybody else in the workplace, because we're all in the same boat returning. And also, hi, Lorena. It's nice to see that you're still around, because I see a message there from her, and she was our co-op advisor many years ago.
Love it. Erin or Selena?
Sure. We've gone fully remote in our workplace, so I don't know if I have, the best advice for face-to-face, because we haven't reintegrated. We're going fully remote. We're staying fully remote. So there's lots of workplaces that do allow for that, if that's something you're more comfortable with. But, my advice sounds really simple, but it's just turn your camera on. There's so many people that join in Zoom calls and they have their camera turned off, and it's so easy to just recede into the background when that's the case. So if you join a call, just turn your camera on, be visible. And, once you're visible, it's easier to start contributing and speaking up in those meetings. So it's small steps, but I think just having your camera on can make a huge difference.
That's so true. We do a lot of networking events, and it's surprising how many people do not turn on their camera. It's like, just take that, just get dressed and turn on your camera. Selena?
Yeah, I think that's a really great way of definitely like bringing that integration piece if you're moving from remote going into like a face-to-face situation. And I think what I would offer is like knowing that it's true. It's not just recent grads or new grads. It's everyone is, dealing with this weird transition right now. So if you're going into face-to-face, connections at work or face-to-face interactions, my biggest piece of like learning at least is slow down. So whenever speaking to anybody, and like I find if I get really nervous or anxious about a conversation I have to have, it's like slow down and just know that when you're in conversation with someone, like it's okay to pause, it's okay to ask questions, it's okay to just listen for a little while so that you can gather your thoughts a little bit more like calmly and then be able to, respond back in a way that feels comfortable for you. And another thing that's really helped me is creating touch bases with your boss or your employer or your leadership or even just peers. Because if you create touch bases with those people regularly, kind of like what we were talking about, I think Erin had brought up, just like creating those little moments or those little opportunities throughout the day. I think this is another one of those smaller daily things or weekly things that you can do where if you're creating maybe, let's say like a 15-minute touch base with a leader or a boss or a coworker at work every week, it might help you slowly get back into that feel of like having face-to-face conversations and being able to like articulate whatever it is you're wanting to communicate. So step by step, like just take it one step at a time and know that it's okay to move at a little bit of a slower pace and to take your time with it. But at least if you're making those like steps towards getting better at face-to-face interactions again, I think it'll just create a bit of a cushion of comfort.
Gabby, do you want to end us off with the last question?
Sure.
No, it sucks. It's already 2:00.
I know. So our last question, what is your International Women's Day message or final piece of advice? Whoever has an idea, you can go first.
Sure, I can jump in on this one. I think my message is to just be authentic to yourself, advocate for yourself. You're not going to find somebody that's going to do it for you. I think, you just have to be really intentional about what you want, advocate for yourself and find those allies and go after it.
Amazing. Charuvi, do you have any advice?
Yeah, sure, Gabby. Interesting, right in the morning, I was sent across this beautiful story by a male colleague who's actually a feminist. So it's about a woman named Meera with many wives. So I won't go into the details of the story. The moral of the story was that the woman needs to have or should try to have other women supporters in her life for her to progress in every direction. Like the proverbial sisterhood, in one line, be the woman that fixes another woman's crown without telling the world that it was crooked. So women supporting other women, basically.
Beautiful. I love
Thank you.
that. Selena, do you have anything?
Yeah, I would say my biggest piece of like what I'm taking into today is just knowing that your path is so unique and that it might not look like anything that's been done before, and that's okay. It's just about continuing to follow what feels genuine and authentic to you, and just knowing that your path is your own and just really honoring yourself in your journey.
100%. And last but not least, Jennifer, anything?
Yeah, I've said it a few times, but being uncomfortable is where we grow. So don't be afraid to use that voice. Don't be afraid to say something. Making people uncomfortable is okay. So say something if it needs to be said.
Beautifully said.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much to all of our wonderful panelists. It was an absolute pleasure having all you here with us today. Thank you for being the voice of change and helping us to break the bias.
And thank you everyone who attended today. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. In the chat, you all saw that I put a link to a form for you to receive a free book entitled Invisible Women: Data Bias in a World Designed for Men. It is a beautiful book, especially encompassing everything that we have discussed today. And I hope you all have the opportunity to enjoy and read just a little bit more and get a little bit more informed on this topic. As well, we, the Sheridan Student Union and Sheridan Alumni, as a part of our own contributions to the whole initiative, we are going to be donating $600 to the Elizabeth Fry Society in Peel and Halton region, which is a women's shelter that works with women who are at risk or in a conflict with the law by providing them with coping strategies and opportunities to help build confidence and guide them in productive and empowered abilities. And I think it's important to remember that when bias occurs, that there's a number of ways to respond. Some of them is what is in elements that we discussed today. We can speak up for someone in the moment. We can ask a probing question. We can stick to the facts, explain how the bias is in play, and finally, advocate for policy and process change.
Great advice, Abby. Together we can forge women's equality. Collectively, we can all break the bias. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.